let's talk about defense. That just happens to be the same side of the ledger that Mr. Musk gets the vast majority of his money from. In fact, at the same time that they were unlawfully, and we will stay in court, because on this side, we believe in law and order. We believe in, a number of us are actually lawyers, but nevertheless, we understand the Constitution. We believe in that as well. And so there's things such as, impoundment, right? Because as Mr. Whitson said, he said, we need to return the power of the purse to Congress. It never left. According to the Constitution, that's where it's at. Now, I know that people are confused right now because for whatever reason, we had a guy that went in, and you talk about people invading our data. Listen, people said that they were upset about TikTok, but I'm upset about the guy that runs Twitter, who for sure is doing nefarious things, because I don't understand, if you are trying to conduct audits and figure out where the waste, fraud, and abuse is, I don't know why you would go to some tech guy. In fact, it was only techies that were sitting there at inauguration. We didn't have auditors. I would welcome auditors to come in and do forensic audits. In fact, he sat there in the Oval Office yesterday and he admitted that he was lying, and he was using his propaganda machine to do it when he said that we sent millions of dollars to Gaza for condoms. That was a lie. So let me tell you something.
The gentlelady's time has expired.
It is time for
the
us
gentlelady's
to do our
time
job
has expired.
and rein in this rogue actor known
The gentlelady's
as
time has expired.
Hey guys, today we need to talk about this committee hearing. Now, I don't know who thought it was smart to put Marjorie Taylor Greene in charge, but here we are. Yeah, somebody decided she should be chairwoman. Make that make sense. So Greene starts off talking about Trump because, of course, she defends him. She says, and I quote, President Trump signed an executive order on his first day in office called Establishing and Implementing the President's Department of Government Efficiency. But here's the kicker, y'all. She's actually admitting, without even realizing it, that Trump just took something President Obama created in 2014 called the U.S. Digital Service and slapped a new name on it. Like, that's your big flex? Then she brings up Elon Musk, saying Trump can bring him into the Oval Office anytime he wants. What's Elon Musk got to do with government efficiency? Oh, I forgot. He's the unelected vice president. The way she's talking, you'd think Elon was about to solve all our government problems instead of making them worse. Listen, real leadership doesn't just rename offices and pretend it's progress. But hey, that's just my 2 cents.
President Trump signed an executive order on his first day in office called Establishing and Implementing the President's Department of Government Efficiency. The EO simply renamed an office in the White House that was actually established by President Obama in 2014 called the U.S. Digital Service. President Trump can have Elon Musk into his Oval Office anytime he likes. Americans are shocked to learn that $2.7 trillion of their hard-earned tax dollars have been stolen or wasted in improper payments since 2003. You see, in the private sector, companies can't continue to run if they keep employees that allow waste and abuse with their resources. But that has continued for decades here in the federal government. Mr. Talcove, do private sector companies have a lower rate of improper payments than the federal government?
Yes, the fraud rate that the criminals are taking advantage of in the public sector is around 20%. In the private sector, it's around 3%. And it's really because the tools that are used in the private sector aren't used in the public sector. Front-end identity verification, self-certification, and then finally making sure that individuals are who they say they are. If we start using these tools, you will see the fraud rate go down dramatically, because for the most part, this fraud isn't taking place by real individuals. It's individuals whose identities have been stolen on the dark web. They use that information pretending to be somebody else, and because of the antiquated systems, processes, and technologies in place in government programs, they're able to steal at scale.
Right. So, Mr. Talcove, we would say that private companies that pretty much have to exist on a 20% profit rate, they are not allowed. They can't continue to be successful if they were to allow their customers' data to be stolen like that and used by criminals. However, the federal government, who can continue printing checks and continue in operation, never fixes its problems because it can't be forced to go out of business. Would you agree with that? Yes or no?
Yes. One of the things I noticed during COVID was the criminals learned that government was the mark because it never runs out of money. And they focus on it at scale, and then the likelihood of getting caught is virtually zero.
I think it's outrageous for Americans to know that their identity can be stolen and then used for child trafficking, drug trafficking, and terrorism, like you stated in your opening statement. Ms. Royal, your testimony states that many programs operate under essentially an honor system in which applicants need not verify their identity, income, residency, or other key eligibility factors. You call this a trust everyone instead of a trust by verify approach. Does this mean the federal government in some states are giving out billions of dollars to individuals without verifying who they are or whether they meet program eligibility requirements?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
That's outrageous.
Representative Garcia stepped in next, setting things straight. He called out Republicans for attacking vital programs like Medicare, Medicaid, and the Department of Education, all while billionaires like Musk get richer. Garcia reminded everyone that cuts to health care, education, and Social Security hurt everyday people most.
Well, thank you. Thank you to all of our witnesses for being here. And I want to just start off by making something clear. I think we're all here to fight against the lies, the corruptions, and the attacks on our social safety net. Now, we should in no way be cooperating with House Republicans who want to shut down the Department of Education and destroy Medicare and Medicaid. And we should not stand by as the richest man on the planet gives himself and his companies huge tax cuts while the American people get absolutely nothing. Now, I find it ironic, of course, that our chairwoman, Congresswoman Greene, is in charge of running this committee. Now, in the last Congress, Chairwoman Greene literally showed a dick pic in our oversight congressional hearing, so I thought I'd bring one as well. Now, this, of course, we know is President Elon Musk. He's also the world's richest man. He was the biggest political donor in the last election. He has billions of dollars in conflicts of interest, and we know that he is leading a power grab also abided by and encouraged by Donald Trump and, of course, the chairwoman, Congresswoman Greene. But I also want to run through what DOGE actually is going to do. It's a demolition plan that's going to run through our government. DOGE is trying to abolish the Department of Education. That means opportunities denied to kids. It means you're ripping away opportunities for children with disabilities who are dependent on this money. You're also halting medical research, which is also critical, which we have to also stop. The idea that we're going to eliminate or destroy the Department of National Institutes of Health, NIH, is crazy. Let's talk about the Department of Labor. We're talking about protections for working people across this country, where people can actually complain about abuses their companies are making against them and their coworkers. Workers are now going to be in danger. And let's also talk about the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, another huge issue for us. Think about the scammers and fraudsters that will be empowered across this country because Elon Musk wants, essentially, these companies have more power over consumers and over people across this country. Look at the Centers for Disease and the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. That is actually what's being discussed partly today. Healthcare, we're talking about being denied to millions of poor people, working class people across this country. And now, of course, they're on to their largest target, the U.S. Social Security Administration. We're talking about the destruction of the actual social safety net in this country. We know that 1 in 5 Americans collect Social Security, seniors, disabled people. This entire plan is about hurting the American social safety net and destroying our institutions. And it's important that we actually call out what is happening at this subcommittee. This is not about working with the richest man on the planet. This is actually about empowering. This committee wants to empower the richest person in the world to hurt people so they can take all of this money that they so-called want to save and then give it to themselves, their companies, and their billionaire friends. That is the attack that is happening in this committee and across this country, and it's important that we call it out. We also know, of course, that Elon Musk is sending his unqualified DOGE staff to carry out this agenda across all these agencies. And in some cases, actually teenage staffers. No accountability, no experience, and problematic records. They're trying to rob you, and they're probably a minor.
Representative Casar then highlighted how inspector generals, people who investigate waste, fraud, and abuse, were fired for looking into Elon Musk's companies. 5 inspector generals fired by Trump and Musk for simply doing their jobs. Meanwhile, Musk gets $8 million a day from government contracts, while our seniors survive on just $65 a day from Social Security. Casar nailed it when he said this subcommittee isn't about government efficiency for regular folks. It's about billionaires helping themselves to our tax dollars.
This subcommittee is supposedly about looking into waste, fraud, and abuse. So I'd like to start talking about independent inspector generals who are supposed to be looking into waste, fraud, and abuse. Mr. Talcove, do you know how many inspector generals at agencies that were investigating Elon Musk's companies have been fired by the Trump-Musk administration?
No.
It is 5. Ms. Royal, the Inspector General of the Department of Labor had 17 open investigations into Tesla and SpaceX. Do you know what the Trump-Musk administration did to that Inspector General?
No.
They fired him, and I think y'all know. Mr. Whitson, the Inspector General of the Department of Transportation was investigating Tesla. Do you know what the Trump-Musk administration did to that Inspector General?
No.
They were fired. The Department of Defense's Inspector General was looking into SpaceX. Mr. Hedler, do you know what the Trump-Musk administration did to that Inspector General?
I believe he was fired.
Thank you. I think everybody on the panel knows what the answer to these questions were. The U.S. Department of Agriculture Inspector General was investigating Musk's Neuralink. Mr. Talcove, now I'll ask you again under oath, do you know what Mr. Trump did to that Inspector General that was looking into one of Musk's companies?
No.
He was fired. The Inspector General at the EPA was repeatedly taking on Tesla. Mr. Hedler, since it seems that you're answering the questions that everyone knows the answer to, do you know what the Trump-Musk administration did to that Inspector General?
I believe he was also fired.
Also fired. At least 5 Inspector Generals that were looking into Elon Musk's companies were fired by the Trump-Musk administration. These Inspector Generals, who are independent, protected by law, they are the people that find the waste, fraud, and abuse and found many of the cases of waste, fraud, and abuse that have been brought up today, fired because they were looking into Elon Musk. At the NLRB, the National Labor Relations Board, which is supposed to protect workers from getting their unions busted by folks like Elon Musk, made functionally broken by the so-called Department of Government Efficiency that really is the Department of Government Efficiency for Elon Musk, not for you. They are trying to shut down the Department of Education, the Department of Labor. You know what Elon Musk doesn't seem to be looking into? His own contracts. Again, I'll ask you, Mr. Talcove, do you know how much money a day Mr. Musk will receive from the federal government for his contracts?
No.
The answer is $8 million a day. Just last year, Elon Musk was promised $3 billion from close to 100 contracts with the federal government. Ms. Royal, do you know how much the average person in this country who survives on Social Security, one of our seniors who's worked their entire life, about how much they have to survive on a day?
I do not.
$65 a day. We're not looking into Elon Musk's $8 million a day. This subcommittee, chaired by Marjorie Taylor Greene and the House Republicans, is looking into your grandmother's $65 a day. Let me be clear. I think we would all support taxpayer savings, look into money we might needlessly send to billionaires and big corporations, find taxpayer savings, and send it back to your hardworking family. But instead, what House Republicans and the Trump-Musk administration want to do is they want to look into your kids' lunch money, your kids' teacher's salary, into your grandparents' Social Security. They want to take that money and give it out in billionaire tax cuts, and they are talking about that in committee tomorrow. In Budget Committee tomorrow, they just released their plan. So let me be clear. When Republicans talk about government efficiency in this Congress, they're not looking into billionaires who don't pay their taxes. They're not looking into billionaires who get rich off of government contracts. They're not looking into Elon Musk firing watchdogs who are supposed to keep him accountable. They're looking at cutting your public schools. They're going straight for your Social Security. They're coming straight for cancer research. They're coming straight for the Department of Education. They're not looking at big tech. They're not looking at big pharma because those people fund their campaigns. If this committee were serious about rooting out waste from our federal government, then today's whole hearing would be about how Musk and Donald Trump are firing the independent watchdogs who've done this work for decades. Instead, my Republican colleagues' actual goal on this committee is to distract from Trump and from Musk's corrupt war on accountability.
Then Representative Crockett jumped in, making it clear Democrats are here to actually do the work. She pointed out how Republicans skipped previous hearings on improper payments and are now suddenly passionate. Crockett also called out the hypocrisy of firing federal workers while Musk profits from defense contracts, a sector eating up half our budget without passing audits.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Mr. Talcove, I'm just going to go ahead and pick up where you left off really quickly. Just to be clear, the upgrades that you're talking about as it relates to our data processes, these aren't things that would be free, are they? They would cost some kind of money. Not looking for a number, but they will cost, correct?
Some are free and some would cost money.
Okay. All right. So I just want to leave it there because we've had a number of these hearings. So I do want to be clear, before the Trump administration came in, this committee did exist in the form of the Oversight Committee, and our task is to root out waste, fraud, and abuse. In that vein, we had a number of hearings, at least last term. I can't speak for any other term as I'm only in my sophomore term, and we dealt with improper payments. And interestingly enough, our chairwoman, who is so passionate about this today, she missed every single one of those improper payment hearings. But just to be clear, I was there, so I don't want anyone to believe that Democrats just come to work and don't plan to do work. In fact, I'm trying to figure out exactly what it is that the Republicans believe our job is, because right now they have relinquished their constitutional duties over to an unelected bureaucrat, someone who no one went out to vote for. And absolutely, he is occupying the Oval Office, as we saw yesterday. And that is a first for me, to see someone occupying the Oval Office who's never actually been elected to the Oval Office and actually answering more questions than the person that allegedly got elected. But for whatever reason, this is the first time we're having a DOGE subcommittee hearing, and that guy's not here. Instead, we have y'all. So I do want to thank you for coming. But I will say this. It's also interesting to me that in the first few days of DOGE existing, we know that they are trying to get rid of the Department of Education, USAID, Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. They're laying off FAA workers. They are going after the FDA, the CDC, the HHS, the FBI agents, and they're talking about getting rid of FEMA. And they brought y'all in. And I am going to say that I actually was shocked that there was only one person that seemed like he was an overt Trumper as you laid out your opening remarks, because I anticipated that at least one of y'all would say, yes, what Elon is doing is exactly what we would prescribe. But instead, I will applaud you because you actually were focused. You talked about what the American people are looking for us to do. We've actually consistently on this side of the aisle promoted this idea of making investments into technology so that we can do things such as, say, look at the Department of Defense. The Department of Defense that takes up approximately 50% of our discretionary income, or our discretionary spending. Approximately 50% goes to Department of Defense. Department of Defense has not been able to pass an audit in the last 6 audits, and we're not talking about pennies. I understand that we want everything to be perfect, and if we could get all waste, fraud, and abuse out, that would be fantastic. But let me talk about the big numbers. The big numbers are on that side. When we look at, say, our entire workforce, our federal workforce, as we're trying to somehow fire all of them, they don't even make up a total of 5%. It's even less than that when we look at our budget. But let's talk about defense. That just happens to be the same side of the ledger that Mr. Musk gets the vast majority of his money from. In fact, At the same time that they were unlawfully, and we will stay in court because on this side, we believe in law and order. We believe in, a number of us are actually lawyers, but nevertheless, we understand the Constitution. We believe in that as well. And so there's things such as, impoundment, right? Because as Mr. Whitson said, he said, we need to return the power of the purse to Congress. It never left. According to the Constitution, that's where it's at. Now, I know that people are confused right now because for whatever reason, we had a guy that went in and you talk about people invading our data. Listen, people said that they were upset about TikTok, but I'm upset about the guy that runs Twitter, who for sure is doing nefarious things because I don't understand if you are trying to conduct audits and figure out where the waste, fraud, and abuse is. I don't know why you would go to some tech guy. In fact, it was only techies that were sitting there at inauguration. We didn't have auditors. I would welcome auditors to come in and do forensic audits. In fact, he sat there in the Oval Office yesterday and he admitted that he was lying and he was using his propaganda machine to do it when he said that we sent millions of dollars to Gaza for condoms. That was a lie. So let me tell you something.
The gentlelady's time has expired.
It's time for
the
us
gentlelady's
to do our
time has
job
expired.
and rein in this rogue actor known
The gentlelady's
as
time
Musk.
has expired.
This hearing just showed us how deep some folks are willing to go to protect the rich while cutting off everyday people. But we see it, and we're not staying quiet about it. If you liked this video, share it with someone who needs to hear the truth. Thanks for watching, y'all, and see you in the next one.